Hello everyone, my name is Yana and I am a CG specialist at Chaos Group. The topic of today's webinar is rendering for compositors with V-Ray for Nuke. And on my second slide you can see a short webinar overview and what I'm going to cover today. I'm going to say a few words about the idea behind V-Ray for Nuke. Then I'm going to show you how V-Ray was integrated inside Nuke and talk about the most important features in V-Ray. And at the end, I'm going to show you a project, a full 3D environment shot, which was created with V-Ray for Nuke. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please write them down in the chat box, and after the presentation, I'm going to answer them. So when we decided to develop V-Ray for Nuke, our goal wasn't to take all the features, for example, from V-Ray for Maya or from V-Ray for 3ds Max and put all those into V-Ray for Nuke. No, we wanted to give to the compositing artist something useful and to extend the toolset inside Nuke. And you all know how the production pipeline look like, and that a lot of work should be done before a compositing artist can do his job. For example, work from the 3D department, like modeling, texturing, rigging, animation, shading and lighting, and rendering, of course. And let's say that we have done some compositing work, and then the director comes and say, okay, I don't like this, and then the whole work should be restarted. And exactly this going back and forward is a kind of an issue which we wanted to address with V-Ray for Nuke. So now with V-Ray for Nuke, the compositing process has changed, and you have pure lighting and rendering and shading inside Nuke. So now I'm going to jump inside Nuke and show you what we have done so far. And after you have installed V-Ray for Nuke, you're going to see the V-Ray icon over here. And here are listed all the features from V-Ray. And in the V-Ray render section, you can find the most general stuff related to V-Ray, like the V-Ray render itself. I'm going to create a V-Ray render node and scanline render node as well, and as you can see, they are pretty much similar. They are very similar, and this was intentionally designed that way. So the compositing work to a compositing artist will be as easy as possible. And in the V-Ray render node, you have a background input, exactly like here. Then we have object and scene input and a camera input. So now I'm going to create a constant color for the background. And I'm going to change the color to darker gray. And then I'm going to create a camera, and I'm going to use the camera which comes with Nuke. And if you take a closer look over here, you're going to see that we have a V-Ray camera as well. The difference between those two is that in the V-Ray camera, let me show you this, you have here additional projection modes. So if you want to render with a spherical camera, you can do that, and or with a fisheye lens, you can enable this from here. But for now, I'm going to stick with the camera from Nuke. And then what I need is an object, so I'm going to create a sphere and plug it over here. And right now I don't see the sphere, and this is normal. I'm going to create a second viewer and split this into half, and this will be my my 3D viewer. So now you can clearly see that my camera is inside of the sphere, so this was the reason why I wasn't able to see my sphere. Alright, and now V-Ray uses the default lighting of the scene, and what I need right now is a light source. And under the light section you are going to see all the V-Ray lights, and I'm going to use a V-Ray rectangular light. Here it is. I'm going to position it over about my sphere and rotate it about 90 degrees. And of course nothing happens, and this is because those two are not connected. To connect those I need a C node. And now you can see that my light is affecting the sphere. Let's take a closer look to the light. You can easily change the color of the light, make the lighting a little bit colder or warmer. Then you have here an intensity multiplier. I'm going to lower this down a little bit. Then I can change the size of the sphere, of the light, of course. And there is also a directionality parameter, and I'm going to enable it. So here it is. And if you increase the directionality, you're going to have more sharper shadows. And as you can see, here are two inputs. One is for the texture, and you can use also an axis node in order to position your light easier. Let me just drag and drop an image. So this will be the image, and I'm going to plug it into the texture slot. And now I'm using EXR, and this is like this is my image, and this is like a softbox. Okay, and I can go and grade it. Let's say something like this. So I have now a little bit warmer light. And all right, let's jump now to the materials. And in V-Ray, you're going to find those over here. And there are two different ways to apply a material to an object. And the first one is with the apply material node. So over here. And I can plug now the V-Ray material to it. And nothing has changed, and this is because the diffuse color is set to medium gray, and I'm going to change it so you can see the difference. Let's make it purple or so. I'm going to disable the texture of the light. And now I have changed the color, and the second way to assign a material is by, I don't need this anymore, is directly over here. So you are going to get the same result. Let's take a closer look to the material. We can enable the reflections and refractions, and let's do that right now. So I'm going to make this sphere reflective, like a mirror. a pure reflection, and if I want to have a nice fall-off, I'm going to use for now. So here it is. And at the moment, this is pretty glossy to me. So if I want to make the surface a little bit more rougher, I need to decrease the reflection glossiness. So let's say 0.8 or so. All right, and let's make the object. Let's make it refractive. Sorry, so you can see this as well. So now it is pure reflective, but let's go back to the reflection. So those of you who have used V-Ray in a 3D application probably know that you can map the reflection, refraction, the opacity parameters, and we can do this in Nuke as well. But as you can see, there is just one input, and this is for the diffuse. So I'm going to create a noise to show you this. Make it a little bit smaller. And if I want to map the reflections, what I need to do is go over here, and you are going to find a small checkbox. And if I click on it, a second input will show over here. And this was intentionally done by this. So we wanted to keep things cleaner as possible and organized as possible. You can do the same for the glossiness if you want to map it. Here is the input for that, for the refraction as well, and of course for the opacity and so on and so forth. Right, and I'm going to make it a little bit more glossy again. So, and now what I want to do is to overwrite my background, and I can do that with the V-Ray background node, and it comes over here. And now I can override the background, I can override the reflections with different kinds of textures, and let me demonstrate you this. I'm going to drag and drop an HDR image. Right, and I'm going to override the reflections. See how this works? Okay, now let's take a closer look to the V-Ray renderer itself. And if you take a closer look, you're going to see that the anti-aliasing is pretty bad now, and I have a noisy image. And this is normal because my anti-aliasing is not turned on. Let's turn it on. And in V-Ray for Nuke, there is one image sampler, and this is the adaptive image sampler. And as you can see, by enabling it, I have now pretty clean image with nice fall off over here in the reflections. And with those values over here, with the minimum samples and with the maximum samples and the threshold, you can control the quality of your image. So, there is another checkbox which I'm going to turn on, and this is for the global illumination. And in V-Ray for Nuke, V-Ray will calculate the global illumination using brute force algorithms. So now you can see that V-Ray takes information from the background and illuminates the scene. If I change this, the global illumination will change as well. And as I have already mentioned, with the V-Ray background texture node, I can override the GI as well. So let's let's do that. And this will be then the result. All right, and I want to show you one more pretty nice thing about V-Ray for Nuke, and this is that you can add render elements or render passes on the fly. And let's do that. You can find the V-Ray render element node over here. And in order to work properly, you should plug it into your scene. And here you're going to find a long list with a lot of render elements you can choose from. And let's say I want to see my lighting. And this will appear automatically over here. So I can preview this. Right, then I can actually copy this. And I want from this render element to be a GI render element. I need to plug it into the scene, of course. And I can plug a lot of render elements into my scene. What else? What else? Let's say the GI, the diffuse. I want to see the reflection. So again, plug it over here. And here I'm going to see my reflection. All right, I want to show you one more render element, and this is the extra texture render element. So using the extra texture, you can do and create your own render element. And as you can see, there is an input for a texture, and I can plug this noise over here. And here is my render element, the extra texture, and I can preview the noise. So here it is. And the best part is that this won't affect my RGBA at all. So, all right. And if you want to gather even more information, you can do that by using the V-Ray sample info. So let's connect this and go back to the extra texture. And here you can find again a list, and I'm going to preview the UV coordinates of the sphere. So and now I have a UV pass for free. All right, and I want to show you one more thing, and this will be then the V-Ray material preview. So for that, I'm going to create another viewer. Here it is. I don't need this anymore. All right, and as you can see, you can pick between different geometries for a preview. And as the name already say, you can preview your material. So it's very handy and useful if you want to see how your material look like under different lighting conditions and on different objects. So I need a material. I'm going to create a standard V-Ray material and plug it over here. Let's very quickly change the color, and I'm going to make it reflective. Then I'm going to make it glossy or a little bit less glossy. And now I can go in the material preview and pick a different kind of an object. We have a cloth preset, we have a teapot, a statue, and so on and so forth. And as you can see, there is a custom geometry input. So you can plug your custom geometry and see how your material will look like on that particular object. You need just to go over here, pick custom, and plug your geometry. And here you can find different light sources. So we have a sphere light, then rectangular, direct lighting, and my personal favorite one is the V-Ray dome light. And with the dome light, you can light your scene with an HDR with an image, and have an image-based lighting. So there are a few presets about that, and this is the forest preset, then there is a sunset, and sunset 2, and of course you can plug your own HDR from here. So pick custom and plug it over here. So now I'm going to open another basic example. Give me just a second. So, and again, I'm going to use two viewers, one 2D and one for the 3D view. And few words about this scene. I have imported the geometry, which is this sphere. Here it is. And I have a card for the floor, and also a diffuse V-Ray material. All right, and now I have just one light enabled, which gives me this lighting over here. And let's enable the second light source, which is this on the top. And now I can easily play around with the position of the lights, and let me just change my workspace so I don't have any floating windows, and everything will be organized. Okay, now should be better. Yes. So I can play with the position of the light, with the rotation. Then if this is my, let's say, the front light, this one will be my key light. And I want from my key light to be a little bit more colder. I can change the color. And let's make it, let's change the intensity to 30 or so. And I'm going to make it directional. So here it is. And this will be my key light, and this on the top should be my fill light. So I need to be more warm and not so intense. Let's say 60 or so. And this way you can do your own studio setup inside Nuke using 3-point lighting. In this case, I showed you this with just 2 lights, but I'm sure you get the point. What I want to show you now is the dome light. As I have already mentioned, this is my favorite one. And this is the icon. So it looks like this, a half and a sphere. And this is because the default settings of the V-Ray dome light is that this is a half on a sphere, and it gives us uniform lighting. And if I plug a texture to it, there is some texture input, I'm going to have an image-based lighting. So, and that way I can easily light up my scene. And pay attention over here at the dark area. Right now the dome light is a half on a sphere, but you have the opportunity to make it a whole sphere by going over here and click dome spherical. So let's make it again with no HDR. So see the difference? This is with half a sphere, and this is with a whole sphere, with the dome spherical. All right. So this is my first HDR, and as you can see, there is no directional light, there is no sun, and this is the reason I have here very soft shadows. And then I have another example. So this is a forest HDR, and again I don't have here a sun, so see, there is no sun. Then I have another example, which will be this garage over here, and as you can see, the scene is pretty dark right now, but since this is a 32-bit HDR, I can increase the intensity, and exactly this I have done with this color correct node. So take a closer look over here. So this is with the color correction, and this is without, and I have also a glow added to it. So let's take a look at another example. This will be this one. So at this case, so here it is, I have a sunset, and if I lower down the intensity, the exposure, you're going to see that there is no sun, and this is because I have painted the sun out. Because I wanted to have more control over the position of the sun, over the color and the intensity. And since we are inside Nuke, I have created my own sun with a roto shape. Then I have blurred this. Then I have added a little bit of glow and a gray node. And I have merged those two. And this is the result, what I get. And if I now lower down the intensity, you are going to see that here is my sun, and it affects my scene pretty strong. And the last example, which I'm going to show you for a custom HDR will be, or custom lighting using the dome light, will be this one. And in this case here, I have an unwrapped version of a cube with an ambient occlusion over here, and it gives me this lighting. What I have done here is that I have added a roto shapes. This will be a stronger light for my key light, and I have added here another shape. This blue light will be my fill light, and it is not so strong. And then this is the result what I have here. So in order to see the HDR better, I'm going to assign another material to my object, to the sphere, and this will be this V-Ray material, which is a reflective one. It has a glossy reflections to it. And now if I go back to my custom HDR, you can see that I can very easily change the lighting conditions and the lighting situation just by going over here and playing with the shape of the lights or with the position of those, and this will affect my lighting and my reflections, and I can see that immediately. So here it is. And using this approach, you can easily set up your lighting directly in Nuke. Okay, now I'm going to talk about some of the materials, and I want to assign self-illuminating material to these spheres over here, to the small ones. And the first way to do that is by using an emission material from Nuke. And let's do that. So you can see the result, and I can achieve the same result by using a V-Ray material. So I'm going to create a new one, and here I need to go to increase the self-illumination, set it to 1, and of course I can tint it. This will give me same result. Okay, now I want to talk about the V-Ray blend material, and the V-Ray blend material gives us the opportunity to layer shaders on top of each other. And those of you who have used V-Ray in a 3D software know that the regular version of the blend material has a list of shaders, and you can plug different shaders into those and layer those, having one material for the base and many materials for the code. And here in V-Ray for Nuke, we have just 2 inputs, one for the base and one for the code material. And if I create a merge node, you're going to see that the blend material looks similar to the merge node, and it has actually the same functionality. And again, this was intentionally designed like this, so the work of an experienced compositing artist will be more native and more intuitive. So I'm going to assign it to the sphere. So let's assign it and to see what we have here. First, I need one material for the base, so B for the base, and I'm going to call it also base. And my base material will be something like red. Give it a second to update. So this is so I haven't changed it. Okay, and I need another material for the code, and I'm going to rename it that way, and this should be blue or so. All right, and now I have 50% from my base material and 50% for the coating. And this is defined by the blend amount over here. If I if I set it to 0, I'm going to see just the base material, and if I set it to 1, so this is the color of my base material, and if I set it to 1, I'm going to see just the coating material. And exactly like by the merge node, there is a small arrow over here for the mask. So I can blend those with a texture, and I'm going to use a noise texture and plug it over here. And now, where we have a black, over here I'm going to see just the base material, and where we have a white color, I'm going to see the coating material. And using the blend material, I have created, let me show you this, I have created this shader over here for this sphere. So I have a blend material, and this is for the base. So my base is something like a metal, glossy metal. And on top of that, I have a paint material or a coating material, a glossy blue paint, as you can see. And those are blended with this mask over here, as you can see. So this is the mask. And the same mask goes into a bump, and the blend material goes into a V-Ray bump material. And to show you this, right now the bump multiplier is set to 1, and I want that you can see it better, so I'm going to exaggerate the bump effect, set it to 10 or so, and let's see. So pay attention over here, see? This is now the bump, and it is almost like displacement to me, but it's too harsh, so I'm going to lower this down a little bit. And then I have another blend material for these parts of my object, and it is set exactly the same way like I have already showed you before. And what else? Now I can just go and easily change the lighting using the sunset from the dome light. And if I'm if I'm happy with the lighting setup, with my materials which I have made inside Nuke, I can render this out by let's lower down the threshold. So I'm going to have a better quality image, and probably I'm going to enable the global illumination as well. So in this scene, I have showed you how you can light up your scene using different lights, or using dome light with the custom HDRs, which gives you an image-based lighting. Then I showed you some of the materials and how easy you can set a material like that over here. And now I'm going to take a look at a different scenario. Let me just open another scene. And this time I'm going to take a closer look to a different scenario, when a typical production pipeline example. So before that, I want to change again the workspace, and let's say, and create another viewer. All right, and let's say that the 3D department has done the job, and they have modeled everything, this spaceship. They have done the texturing part, the lighting, the shaders, and they have rendered everything, and they gave us an EXR image, which is this one. And in it, it is a multi-channel DXR, so there are a lot of render passes over here. The GI, then I have a mask, the diffuse, and there is a lot of information about the render. And what I have done over here is that I have extracted this information. So I don't want to use actually this viewer. This should be my 3D viewer. So here it is. So I have here the specularity, the refraction, raw reflection, raw light, diffuse, etc., etc. I have merged all of those, and I have started with the compositing. So I have added some clouds for the background, then a little bit of noise, some grading over here, vignetting, and grain. And let's say that I'm pretty happy with the result, and I want to check this with the supervisor or with the director, and the director says, all right, but I don't like the lighting over here. For me, the reflections are pretty flat, so you have to change this. And what can we do? Well, we can send it back to the 3D department. They can change the lighting, and then they should send it to the render farm. And meanwhile, a compositing artist has to wait until everything is done, and he can move on with his work. And now with V-Ray for Nuke, there is another solution about that. And since the 3D department has modeled everything, and actually we have all the assets, what can we do is to ask kindly the 3D department to export the scene to us, to export the geometry as a V-Ray proxy. And we can load the scene, we can load the geometry using the V-Ray proxy, the camera position, and what we can do is to rewrite the whole scene. Before I move on with the rewriting part, I just want to say a few words about the V-Ray proxy. Those of you who have used V-Ray in a 3D application know what the proxy is, but the idea behind the proxy is that you can export your heavy geometry as a V-Ray proxy and save it on your hard drive. And you can import it in Nuke, and it will look like this. So this will be a representation of your geometry. A poly cloud, let's say it like this. But when we render, V-Ray will take your mesh from the hard drive and will load it, and the result will be the same. So you're going to render your high poly. But as you can see, I can navigate very easily in the viewport, having no problems. All right, now I'm going to preview this. Okay, this will be still my 3D viewer. And exactly this I have done over here. You can actually import your geometry not only as a proxy, you can import it as FBX if you want, OBJ, we do support it as well, or you can import also Alembic files if you want to render particles using the V-Ray proxy loader. So at the moment, I have assigned this self-illuminating material to the scene, and I have in no time the alpha. And what I can do is to add additional render elements. So, for example, I can use the V-Ray Fresnel to have a Fresnel-based render element, or I can render a UV pass, and as you can see, this happens very quickly, or an ambient occlusion pass using the V-Ray dirt texture. So this was a little bit off topic, but I wanted to mention this, that you have such possibility, such opportunity. And now I'm going to switch the material to this one, which is a V-Ray material with a little bit of reflection and glossiness. And now I can actually start the rewriting process. Give it just a second to render this. So in my second, I have one scene for the geometry, then I have a second scene for the lights, and all those goes into my main scene. And now just this light is enabled, so this will be my key light, and I can go and change the color of the light, make it a little bit more warmer or so. And I have prepared 3 more lights, and I'm going to enable those. And you can plug as much as more light if you want. And let's say that I don't like so much this strong blue tint on it. What I can do is easily change the color to something more natural. So what's happening right now is that Nuke works that way, that if you click on something, it tries to do the changes right away, and if I click many times, it happens it is a little bit slower, but this is here it is. All right, let's say that I'm pretty happy with my new lighting, and how is this helpful, you're going to say? Well, since we are using V-Ray for Nuke, I can very easily add some render elements to my scene and extract the light, the raw lighting, the raw GI, raw reflection, etc. And I can then go and replace those in my composition. And exactly this I'm going to show you right away. So here I have extract those, then I have merged them, and here I have made this switch over here. So let me show you. This was the first light setup, which the director didn't like so much, and this here is the new setup. As you can see, Nuke takes the information from here, and I have done the whole relighting part inside of Nuke without going back into a 3D application at all. And this is really, really useful, because you can imagine that actually the director sits next to you and he can tell the whole time, all right, I like this, or please change that. And you can do this directly inside of Nuke, which is really, really helpful and saves a lot of time. Okay, and now I'm going to open my next scene. And it is this one. And here I'm going to show you the ray traced subsurface scatter effect inside Nuke. Okay, and a few words about this scene is that, let me just again. So that I have here this creature, and it was created originally in ZBrush, so it has a lot of polygons, and this is the reason why I have imported it with using the V-Ray proxy. And I have done the whole light setup inside of Nuke. So here are my lights. And right now, I'm using the default V-Ray material. Let me change it to a V-Ray skin material, and you can see that now I have the subsurface scatter effect. And of course, we do support the V-Ray subsurface scatter. Here it is. But for creatures and for characters, the skin shader, the V-Ray skin material, is easier to use. And why I'm saying this? Because our skin has 3 different layers, and this is the epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis. And we have this simulated over here with the shallow scattering for the dermis, for the epidermis, then the medium scattering for the dermis, and for the deep scattering for the hypodermis. And you can map those. You probably plug a texture for the veins into the deep scattering. Into the medium scattering, you can plug a texture for the tissues or for a fat. And for the shallow scattering, you can plug a skin texture. And since this is not a human being, it's something like an alien, I'm going to change the colors. So aliens don't have red blood. They have probably, I don't know, let's make it like an avatar. So he should have a blue blood. Then I'm going to change the medium scattering to something bluish as well. And let's see the result. So this is my alien right now, and you can control how deep the light goes into your object with the deep radius parameter. And if I increase this, so let's say 1, I'm going to see more from the subsurface scatter effect. And if I decrease it, I'm going to see less from the effect. So let's see the difference. This is with 1, and let's set it to 0.1. So here now I have just a little bit of the subsurface scatter effect on the very thin areas of the ears. And a big advantage of the V-Ray skin material in comparison with, let me actually create one, with the V-Ray SSS material, is that here you have 2 layers of reflection. You have a primary reflection and a secondary reflection. And I can make it now a little bit more glossy. So let's say 0.7 and I have typed this pretty fast. So something like this. Come on. Okay, here you can see that now I have a little bit more glossy reflections. And so you can see that the V-Ray SSS works pretty fine. I'm going just to assign it. And here you have a lot of presets to choose from. And you can take advantage of those, of course, as well. And use a preset and then tweak the options until you're happy with the result. So this was the subsurface ray trace subsurface scatter inside of Nuke. And now I'm going back to my presentation, and I have talked about all these bullet points over here, and now I want to talk about a project which is a collaboration project between the lead compositing artist Shaheen Tusi, and which was working at that time in Lipsync, which is a studio in London. And so between Shaheen Tusi and a chaos group. And Shaheen was one of our first beta testers of V-Ray for Nuke, and he liked the product very much, and he wanted to see how far V-Ray for Nuke can go, and he wanted to push the limits really hard, and he done it actually. Let me show you what we had at the beginning, and we had this shot over here, which was taken from a helicopter, and this is actually a Hong Kong. We had this shot as a starting point, and after that Tim Homan, who is concept artist in Method Studios, made this concept for us. At this point, I want to say a lot of thanks to Homan, and we started with the whole modeling part at our office in Sofia, and we modeled the whole city. And this is the final concept. We have improved it a little bit, and we have simulated some cars over here, which you're going to see just in a few moments, in order to give more life to the city. And then we have sent all the assets to Shaheen, and he imported those inside Nuke and started rendering with V-Ray for Nuke. And those are actually screenshots from his project. So those two as well. And this here is the final render, as you can see. And I just want to mention that he worked on his laptop, and these are actually the parameters of his workstation, and he has used also another machine for the rendering using V-Ray standalone. So nothing fancy, this was just a regular laptop. And this is the result. So we have a full 3D environment completely done inside of Nuke. And now it's time to show you actually the rendered sequence. So this is it. This is the city, and you can see the cars, what I was talking about before. And Shaheen has used photogrammetry to extract the 3D information from those cliffs over here, and he was able to develop a couple of tools. One of those was to match the lighting situation, and the other was that he was able to remove the shadows completely and to rewrite the whole scene. And let me show you a test of it. So this is this thing here. So this is the ambient and the 3D information taken from the image from here, and then this is with no shadows, as you can see. This is just the diffuse. The diffuse layer, and here he has used a V-Ray dome light, and he was able to rewrite the scene, so you can see how the lighting and the shadows is changing. And using these tools, he was able to rewrite the whole scene and end up with an image like this, like a golden hour shot. So this was all actually, and just for a recap, I want to say a few words that what I have showed you. I have talked about, I said a few words about the idea about V-Ray for Nuke. Then I showed you the basics, and I showed you some tips and tricks. And at the end, I showed you the whole potential of V-Ray for Nuke. And with V-Ray for Nuke, you have pure lighting and shading. You have ray-traced reflections and refractions. You have global illumination, image-based lighting, and you can add additional render passes on the fly. And all this gives you more flexibility and will save you a lot of time. And people say that time is money, so it will save time and money. So that was all, guys. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you have enjoyed the webinar, and now I'm going to take a look at the chat box and see if there are some questions and answer those. Thank you again.